Thank you all for joining us today. This is Medicaid Ohio's introduction to, deep dive into the endocannabinoid system. And this is our Cannabis 103 Budtending 103 class. If you stick around to the end, you'll get a certificate for your time that you can then use for resumes and so forth. And we thank you for joining us and for participating in our program. We are grateful to be sponsored by Trulieve, which is one of the dispensaries here in Ohio. And we are also grateful to have Mary Alliger with us, who is a wonderful educator who has a vast amount of knowledge and education on this topic. And she's also incredibly funny and interesting to listen to. So I think that you'll really enjoy her presentation today. And I'm going to go ahead and we got one more. We're admitting one more. We got a few more people who are coming in, but I will go ahead and turn it over to Mary. And thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Alliger, and I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. This is one of my favorite presentations to give, so I'm so happy that you're here and you get to sit with me and learn along. So let me share my screen real quick with you guys, and we'll get started. All right. Everybody see my screen? Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you for the thumbs up.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Mary Alliger. Today, we are going to dive into the endocannabinoid system, otherwise known as the ECS. I like to call this the most important system in the human body that you and your doctor never learned about in school. Before we get started, though, I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Trulieve. They are dedicated to bringing you relief you can trust, growing their plants by hand in climate controlled environments to keep the process as natural and pure as possible. Learn more about their products, their brands, and find a Trulieve dispensary near you at trulieve.com. And also, I wanted to give you a little bit about my background. So, my career is deeply rooted in cannabis education and advocacy. I started as an activist way back in 2013, collecting signatures for medical cannabis and hemp. And since then, I have worked on numerous other efforts to both legalize and reform cannabis in Ohio. My cannabis education background consists of numerous certificates, like from Cannabis Training University, Leaf Medic, MJ Hybrid Solutions, as well as a Master of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I have worked in a handful of dispensaries here in Ohio, and I was responsible for the training and continuing education for a few of those that I did work for. And I've also had the privilege of working with Medicaid OH for the last few years, and I have enjoyed creating educational content for our subscribers and for you guys as well. Okay, so it's safe to assume that most of us in this room, or in this meeting, I should say, know we know what happens when someone consumes cannabis. But the question I want you to ask yourself is why? Why is this single plant able to create such vastly different effects throughout the mind and body? So we know this system exists, the endocannabinoid system, but what is its primary job? The entire endocannabinoid system is dedicated to one massive task: maintaining homeostasis. If you aren't familiar with the term, homeostasis is the self-regulating process your body uses to keep its internal environment completely stable. Think of it like a master thermostat for your body. For us to function at our peak, our bodies have to keep variables like our core temperature and oxygen saturation within a very specific, healthy range. The word itself actually comes from Greek roots, meaning equal and staying still, which perfectly describes its purpose. It is all about achieving a state of biological equilibrium. When we say that the endocannabinoid system provides balance, we aren't talking about physical coordination, like standing on one foot. We are talking about the precise cellular management of your body's vital resources. When you get too hot, your body sweats to cool down. When you get too cold, you shiver to generate heat. That automatic adjustment is homeostasis in action. And the endocannabinoid system is the manager overseeing that process. And that leads us up to the most important question of the day. If the endocannabinoid system is responsible for keeping our entire biological system in this perfect state of balance, how exactly does it do that? How does it work? Okay, so for a very long time, researchers suspected that our bodies had specific cannabinoid receptors because of how we react to plants and drugs. The real breakthrough, though, happened in the mid-1980s when Dr. Alan Hallett and her student William Devane provided the first conclusive evidence that these receptors actually exist. And since the 1990s, scientists have been working hard to uncover the complex molecular details of the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so we've discovered the endocannabinoid system. Where did these receptors come from? Over 1 billion years ago, early life forms produced fatty acids that eventually led to the creation of endocannabinoids. So pictured on this slide, you can see an ancient sea squirt, and it happens to be one of our closest relatives. So around 590 million years ago, the very first cannabinoid receptor appeared in one of these sea squirts. And what does that mean for us? It means that all vertebrates, any animal with a backbone, are born with this system, the endocannabinoid system. So what exactly makes up the endocannabinoid system? Well, it boils down to 3 main parts. First, you have cannabinoids, and this category includes both endogenous cannabinoids and exogenous cannabinoids. Endogenous cannabinoids are the cannabinoids that your body creates on its own, but more people are commonly familiar with exogenous cannabinoids, which are created by the plant and responsible for the effects experienced. Receptors are the sites that both the endogenous and exogenous cannabinoids bind to, creating their effects, and enzymes are biological catalysts, usually a protein that speeds up the chemical reactions in the body, and they play crucial roles in digestion, metabolism, DNA replication, detoxification, and many other physiological functions. So let's dive a little deeper, and let's start with the keys of the system, the cannabinoids. So like I said before, there are 2 types of cannabinoids. There are endogenous cannabinoids and exogenous cannabinoids. Endogenous cannabinoids are your body's natural cannabis-like chemicals, and they are made from fats, and they are released exactly when your body needs them. The two main endogenous cannabinoids are 2-AG, which strongly activates our receptors, and anandamide, which is weaker but can actually block other signals. So together, they affect your mood, your pain levels, and even your brain development. Then we have exogenous cannabinoids. These are the ones you're probably more familiar with. They exist outside the human body and are found in abundance in the cannabis plant. And we call them phytocannabinoids. You know, the major ones are THC and CBD, and you see them all the time, but there is also a whole list of minor ones like CBC, THCV, and CBDA. Although this is not an exhaustive list, this is a list of cannabinoids that you could find on an Ohio cannabis label. So if cannabinoids are the keys, then receptors are the locks. The receptors that you will hear about the most are CB1 and CB2. They're the ones we've known about the longest, and they're the ones that we've studied as they pertain to cannabis the most. But science is evolving, and we are now studying non-CB1 and non-CB2 receptors like GPR55 and TRP channels. And you can see this nice little illustration here where it shows the kind of lock and key mechanism on your cells. There are receptors that have very specific keys that can unlock them. So a cannabinoid comes in, it finds a cannabinoid receptor, it goes into that receptor, and action is taken. So let's talk about these receptors real quick. I'm going to keep diving a little deeper. Starting with CB1. Imagine this as a brain switch. When THC turns this switch on, it slows down the messages between your nerve cells, which changes your memory, your mood, your hunger, and how you feel pain. It is the most common message receiver in your brain, but we also find it in places like your stomach, and it actually helps control how fast your food moves through your gut. Now, CB2 receptors, they act a little bit differently. They are found primarily in the peripheral nervous system and your immune system. Your peripheral nervous system is like your arms, your legs, everything below the neck. Researchers have actually discovered much higher levels of CB2 receptors in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. So this is a little bit different. We know that CB2 receptors are found primarily in the body, and CB1 receptors are found primarily in the brain. But here, researchers have actually discovered higher levels of CB2 receptors in the brains of patients with Alzheimer's. And this suggests that your body, or the endocannabinoid system, is jumping into action when Alzheimer's is starting to develop. And it brings more CB2 receptors into the brain than there normally would be to help deal with the neuroinflammation. It's pretty neat. Now let's talk about these lesser known cannabinoid receptors. We're not going to get too complicated with them, I promise. So GPR55 acts like a brand new type of cannabinoid receptor. It is found in pain-sensing nerve cells, and it activates when it's exposed to THC, but it uses a totally different signaling pathway than CB1 and CB2. Different highway, same destination. Interestingly though, CBD actually acts as an antagonist here, meaning it blocks the receptor. Then you have the TRP channels, which are tiny gate-like proteins in our cells. They help our body sense things like temperature, pain, and taste, and they play a massive role in chronic pain and nerve conditions. So to summarize how this works, receptors are the locks on your cells, and only specific keys can unlock them. Whether it is anandamide produced by your body or THC produced by the plant, they both act as keys that fit perfectly into your cannabinoid receptors to trigger a response. So, what happens when you consume cannabis? So, when you consume cannabis, the plant's cannabinoids are binding to these receptors, and they're going to bind in one of three ways. They're either going to act as an agonist, which completely activates the receptor, or they're going to act as an antagonist, where it binds to the receptor so the key is in the keyhole, but it's blocking it so no other keys can get in, or no other cannabinoids can get in. And then a partial agonist does a little bit of both. It's kind of like someone standing in a doorway, halfway in the room and half out. They're not completely blocking the door. You can get through, it's just a little harder to get through. So, now the final piece of the puzzle is enzymes. Enzymes handle degradation, meaning they break things down. And this isn't a bad thing. It is a highly controlled cleanup process to either remove harmful toxins or break down molecules so the body can recycle their parts. But enzymes also do the exact opposite, which is called biosynthesis. And here they're acting as builders. They're taking small molecules and making them more complex. Without enzymes, this growth and repair process would be way too slow to keep us alive. In our endocannabinoid system, we have four major enzymes. We have the FAAH and MAGL, and they're the cleanup crew. They break down your natural cannabinoids in the body, the endocannabinoids called anandamide and 2-AG. Remember those? FAAH and MAGL are breaking those down. DAGL and NAPEPLD are the builders. They're producing the 2-AG and the anandamide. And interestingly enough, talking about enzymes brings us to a very practical question. How do edibles work? So when you consume an edible, the THC goes all the way through your digestive system. And as it does, it has to pass through the liver, where enzymes metabolize it. So THC passes through the liver for what's called first pass metabolism, and enzymes create a chemical reaction that converts the delta 9 THC molecule that we all know and love into something called 11-hydroxy THC. And it is because of this conversion that the effects feel stronger and last much longer than if you had simply inhaled it. Okay, so we just talked about how THC is metabolized in the liver, and it's metabolized specifically by some enzymes called CYP2C9 and CYP3A4. But this biological process brings up a critical safety issue. Medicaid OH and Trulieve both believe in keeping all cannabis consumers educated and safe. And so we must talk about these enzymes CYP2C9 and CYP3A4 because these specific enzymes are also utilized by many prescription medications. And because cannabinoids rely on these exact same enzymes and bind to the same receptors throughout our central and peripheral nervous systems, they come with a very real risk of interacting with other medications. When we talk about this risk, we need to talk about the largest demographic in Ohio for medical cannabis use, our seniors. People aged 55 and over are the largest group of Ohio medical cannabis consumers. They are also the demographic most likely to be experiencing polypharmacy, which is the use of multiple prescription medications at the same time. Because in older adults, liver and kidneys naturally process chemicals slower, adding cannabis to a heavy medication regimen like blood thinners, heart medications, or even sedatives significantly compounds the risk of adverse effects. And as educators and bud tenders, understanding this interaction between the plant, our receptors, and our enzymes is exactly why we must always encourage older patients to speak with a pharmacist or doctor before adding cannabis to their routine. I will give this one little note. As a bud tender in the state of Ohio, you are not a medical professional, not a doctor, not a pharmacist. Someone's medication routine is literally none of your business. You're not supposed to be asking them about what medications they are taking. However, you can give someone a little bit of a warning beforehand, especially if it's their first time purchasing at your dispensary or at all, and just let them know that cannabis can have some adverse effects when mixed with prescription medication, and to discuss those effects with your doctor or pharmacist before starting a cannabis regimen. That's all you have to say. Keep it HIPAA compliant. All right, now that we're done with the regulations and the adverse effects, let's talk about some fun facts about the endocannabinoid system. Did you know that the endocannabinoid system directly impacts the reproductive system? Your uterus contains the highest levels of anandamide in the body, and this chemical plays a crucial role in allowing a fertilized egg to attach to the uterine lining. So when an egg gets fertilized, it has one of two options. It's going to camp out in the uterus, or it's going to leave the uterus. Those are its two options. If it camps out in the uterus, it has a chance to grow and turn into a fetus and be born into a baby. If it leaves, the woman is not pregnant and she continues her life as normal. The decision on whether or not that fertilized egg stays or goes is determined by your endocannabinoid system. Let's talk about schizophrenia, because there is a fascinating link with schizophrenia and cannabis. Scientists believe that people with lower CB2 activity or genetic mutations in their receptors may have a higher risk of developing the disorder. Activating CB2 receptors might help calm down those overactive brain signals, opening the door for new treatment. So activating CB2 receptors can control dopamine, which helps with memory and hallucinations. There is a negative fact about cannabis that you might have heard before, that using cannabis can lead to schizophrenia. And this is why I'm bringing this up, because the research shows that, okay, cannabis can lead to schizophrenia in males under the age of 15 with a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia, which means they have the schizophrenia gene somewhere in their DNA, and cannabis just flipped the switch on, and they're under the age of 15, so their brain is very much under development. That is a very specific situation for that to happen in. And also, what they also don't tell you is that it's not just cannabis that can flip that switch on. A beer can flip that switch on. A cigarette can flip that switch on. A car crash, any kind of stressful or traumatic situation can flip that switch on. So yes, cannabis can lead to schizophrenia under very specific conditions, but so can a lot of other things, and they don't come with the same warnings and worries as cannabis does. And research is finding that it can be helpful in managing the symptoms of schizophrenia. Now, when it comes to autism spectrum disorder, our endocannabinoid anandamide actually works directly with oxytocin to regulate how we experience social rewards. Several studies have shown that cannabis-based treatments can help reduce symptoms like hyperactivity, meltdowns, and anxiety for people on the spectrum. Research is also showing that people born on the spectrum are born with a natural deficiency in anandamide, meaning their body is not producing as much as it should. And a lot of anecdotal evidence is showing that cannabis is extremely helpful for people on the spectrum, because THC, as we know right now, is the only molecule that mimics anandamide in the body. So it stands to reason that these anecdotal stories that you hear about adults with autism using cannabis to manage their symptoms, there might be more truth to that than we even realize. Now, have you ever wondered why chronic illness and everything has been on the rise for the last almost 100 years now? Dr. Ethan Russo, one of the top cannabis researchers, proposes a theory called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, or CED. And he suggests that a simple shortage of endocannabinoids, not just the people on the spectrum born without enough anandamide, but a simple shortage of endocannabinoids for anybody, could be the actual root cause of migraines, fibromyalgia, and irritable bowel syndrome. So, this is something I've been fascinated with for a couple decades now. Correlation does not equal causation. There can always be another factor we don't know about that is actually causing this result. But it's important to note that when prohibition of cannabis began and we took cannabis out of the food chain, that is when the numbers of metabolic disease and cancer and stuff started rising in the United States. When America was growing a lot of hemp and there was hemp farms everywhere, because we were making rope and building sails and doing all kinds of industrial stuff with it, we weren't using every part of the plant, and so we had hemp scraps, and the scraps would very commonly be thrown into the feed that we fed our cattle, our goats, or our animals, right? And so when prohibition hit and the hemp farm shut down, we stopped throwing hemp into the feed. We stopped feeding the animals. We consume hemp. And so here comes this theory that a lot of us activists have. Maybe taking cannabis out of our food chain caused more biological damage than we realize. Perhaps we are not what we eat, but what our food eats. And this isn't a novel idea. The rise of organic foods, pasture-raised meats, and eggs shows that we care about how our animals have been treated before we consume them, because it makes a real difference in the health factor of that food. And so if you can think about it from that perspective, how you don't want hormones or antibiotics in your meat or milk or eggs or dairy, and you don't, you want organic, you want pasture raised, you want cage free, all those things. I also want my animals to be consuming hemp, because what's good for them is good for me. So it's a fun little hypothesis to end on. I appreciate your time today.
I hope you were able to pay attention and follow along. Does anybody have any questions? Let me see. Oh, hi Dawson, I see you. Wonderful. I don't see any questions in the chat. All right. And seeing no one hollering at me, I have a question. Does anybody want to test your knowledge? I got a little trivia game. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to type anything. You can just play along at home like you do when you're watching a YouTube video. How's that sound? I think that's great. Let's do it. Let me share this trivia screen, and we'll end it on some fun. We're gonna have some fun. All right. The endocannabinoid system trivia game. Boop-a-doo-doo. I wish I had a theme song for you. Okay. Question 1. In the mid-1980s, Dr. Alan Howlett and her student William Devane at St. Louis University, Missouri, provided the first conclusive evidence of what kind of receptor? This is a tricky one because you either had to listen to my words or read the slide for all the extra detail that I didn't say. So did I say it or did you read it? Let's find out. A cannabinoid receptor! Bing, 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 bing. Very good. If you guessed cannabinoid, you got it right. Good job, everybody. In my head, everybody's getting a perfect score, so. Whoa! Don't cheat. Don't cheat. Something happened. I went too far. Somehow. Don't cheat. Don't cheat. Don't look at the screen. Just pretend it's not there. Okay. We're getting close. We're getting close. I don't even know how that happened. I wish somebody could tell me how that happened. But that's alright. Okay, question 2. Around how many million years ago did the first cannabinoid receptor appear? How many million years ago did the first cannabinoid receptor appear? Ooh, Samantha, I love it. 590. That's right. About 590 million years ago. Awesome sauce. Okay. Where are CB1 receptors mainly located? CB1. So there's CB1 and there's CB2. One's in the brain, one's in the body. Who's who? Ooh, Samantha says brain. Does everybody agree? Yeah, I agree. That's the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. Good job, Samantha's rolling. She's got this. All right, question 4. Where are CB2 receptors mainly located? So where's CB2? CB1's in the brain. Where's CB2? All right, you ready? If CB1 is in the brain, then CB2 is in the body, otherwise known as your peripheral nervous system. Pew, pew, pew. I like Gabby's little celebrations. Question 5. What type of cannabinoid is found inside the body? Is it exogenous or is it endogenous? Exo or end? Exo or end? Which one is in the body? Samantha says endo, and Samantha is correct. Good job, Samantha. Love it. All right. What do you call a cannabinoid found in plants? So an endocannabinoid is in the body. What kind of cannabinoid is found in plants? Anybody know? Let's find out. Phytocannabinoids. So if this were like multiple choice, I would tell you plant starts with P, phytocannabinoids starts with P. That's how you'll remember that answer. But we could also accept exogenous cannabinoids because it technically is right. So question 7, we're almost done here. Cannabinoids and terpenes bind to... What do they bind to? What are cannabinoids binding to in that body? When they come in, they're all keyed up. They're like, hey, I'm a key. I need a lock. What is that lock called? What is it binding to? Let's find out. Oh, I think Samantha's got it. I think Samantha's got it. Receptors. Pew, pew, pew. All right, question number 8. What are the 2 most studied cannabinoid receptors? We talked about 4, but there are 2 that we know the most about. What do you think? Is it TRP channels? Is it GRP55? CB1? CB2? CB1 and CB2! 1 and 2? Most important? Yeah, I'd go there. Yeah, totally. Alright. I think we got 2 more. Question 9. What are the 2 most studied endocannabinoids? The cannabinoids produced by your body. What are the 2 most studied? Those are those crazy ones with the weird names and the acronyms, right? Let's see. Answer. Anandamide, which I spelled wrong apparently, and 2-HG. So anandamide is, it comes from Sanskrit, ananda meaning bliss. So it's a really interesting word, especially when you think about how anandamide exists in chocolate. And Hershey once sold a chocolate called Bliss. It was all full circle for me. All right, let's see what the last question is. Question 10. Which endocannabinoid plays a role in reproduction? You got anandamide and you got 2-AG. Which one is playing a role in reproduction? Who's in there calling some shots? Let's see if I spelled it right. Anandamide! And I spelled it right. Alright, so how'd you do? I hope you did as good as I think you did in my head. I think everybody did 100%. Everybody got a perfect score. You're experts now. You're ready to go out and educate the world about the endocannabinoid system. Right? Yeah, I know it. You don't gotta say nothing because I know. I feel it in my soul. Alright, thank you so much for playing along. Thank you for being here, watching, and learning. I will be creating your guys' certificates. You'll be getting it in an email. You'll be able to print it out, save it to your computer, put it in your portfolio, whatever you want to do with it. It's up to you, but you'll have a certificate for your participation today. And so, are there anything anybody needs to know before we go? I'm not seeing anything. You guys did amazing. Samantha, you're the GOAT. You're the GOAT today. Thank you for your participation. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you in our future classes. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to just say before you all leave, thanks again. We will do this again. Our next session is on April 16th, and there will be, if it's not up already, you should be seeing the link for that soon. We have a in-person event coming up on May 2nd in Cincinnati. It's going to be a holistic living and career fair. So if you're interested in a career in cannabis, it's a great place to get information and network and so forth. So please make plans to come to that. And I will be down in Louisville this weekend. If anybody is thinking of coming down for the normal Kentucky Cannabis Conference, I will be down there for that all weekend. So feel free to drop by our booth and say hi. And I want to just say thank you again to Mary. She has done a wonderful job again. We will be on again at 6 o'clock if you know anybody who wants to take it, or if you want to just do it again just to get, to immerse your knowledge, feel free to log on. I did send the link for that as well. And feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're both always available, especially via email. So if you have questions, comments, anything about the cannabis in Ohio, Kentucky, or in general, feel free to connect with us and continue the conversation. So thanks again. Have a good day.
Let me